arguably, I think, a better case than Roswell, which most people will have heard of, even though they don't know anything about UFOs. But that happened in Suffolk, and basically at one point a UFO is shining beams down into the nuclear storage bunkers at the base. Now, if that's not of defence significance, then what is? You know, so it's an absolute joke. These are confirmed cases where there's paperwork to back it up, and multiple witnesses, military witnesses, who've come forward and gone on the record. So, you know, for the MOD to say that in 50, 60 years there's no cases of defence significance, that's an absolute joke.
Do you think there will be disclosure soon?
I don't think it will be as soon as some people think, although I think we are moving towards it. And I think one of the reasons why we're moving towards it is I've spoken over the last couple of years to several journalists, and they say it's not really only a matter of time before there's a major announcement.
What makes me laugh is
there's life on Mars, microscopic life, and as soon as that happens, then that's the first brick in the dam against disclosure coming out, because then that proves that there's life, no matter what it is, microscopic, or whatever, bacterial, whatever. It proves that there's life on two planets going around our little star in our little solar system.
Well, I was just reading, there's 450 summit outside our solar system, and I did want to ask you, do you know anything about this Iraq Stargate?
Well, I've heard of it in a cave and blah, 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 but again, there's lots of things said on the internet, and unfortunately with the internet, there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad, and I don't, there's not enough verification to really, as far as I can see, to put any credence towards this. I'd love it to be true, wouldn't it? It'd be great to find some exotic 5,000-year-old stargate in a cave in around Iraq or whatever. I don't care where it is, but at the moment I don't think there's any real credible evidence that proves that yet.
Well, I was just watching someone on Facebook before, and it was like, well, that was what the whole war was over, you know, because of this Stargate had been found in Iraq and somebody else wanted it, you know. But anyway, tell me about the Birmingham UFO group, please, Gary.
And that's run by a guy called Dave Hodrian, who's one of Britain's leading researchers. He recently spoke at the first magazine conference. He was one of the 4 speakers. And he's a young guy in his perhaps mid to late 30s now. And unusually, for a younger person, he has got off his backside, forgive the expression, but he's got off his backside and he's actually gone out and set up a group and sets up meetings, sets up lectures, guest speakers and things like that, and has made a difference. And he's got a nice website, and he's a really active person. He's investigated hundreds of cases. He's become something of an abduction specialist. Well, I think he's
do you know anybody? Have you met anybody that says that they've been abducted?
The only one I've dealt with as a police officer was a very famous police case from, again, coincidentally, November 1980, involving a PC called Alan Godfrey, who was part of the West Yorkshire Police, and this occurred in November 1980. And he basically is, I would say, is regarded as Britain's first proper abduction. And this was before the X-Files and before people thought of the iconic alien heads and greys, as they're referred to. And he had a bizarre experience of seeing a physical craft early one morning, just as he's coming off night shift, in a police car. And then the next thing in his conscious memory is he's suddenly driving 100 yards further down the road, and there's like a missing piece of time. Well, cutting a long story short, he gets hypnotized, and under hypnosis he is transported inside this craft into a room, and there are small creatures putting equipment on his legs, and it's all very weird. But he consciously didn't remember any of that. That only came out through hypnosis. Well, what's the value of hypnosis? Well, it wouldn't be allowed in a court of law, which is kind of my criteria. Certainly not in this country. But it's anecdotal evidence of something bizarre, and it did appear to fill the gaps. And it's a very famous case, and I researched it for about 18 months. It's a great story. I met Travis Walton, who was the guy who inspired the Fire in the Sky story film in 1993 with D.B. Sweeney, James Garner. That was on telly, I think, last night, or I saw it on telly the other day. And that's, another very famous abductee, and he was just a very level-headed guy. And I think one of the things that comes out of these two people that I met was that they were just ordinary people who didn't seek publicity, didn't want to make money, who just got caught up in a bizarre experience. And quite frankly, if they were to have their lives again, I think probably both of them, I certainly know with Alan Godfrey, that he'd probably say, I wish it had never happened to me, because he was ridiculed, the media portrayed him as a lunatic and blah, blah, blah. And that's a sad indictment of the way the media treats the subject, which is very wrong, because these are very real experiences.
It's a lot better in where Jamie Malston is it Brazil? Is it Brazil or Mexico?
Jaime Maussan in Mexico. Yeah,
Mexico, yeah. They're much more open about UFOs. I mean, he's got a great show.
I mean, I went to Brazil for a conference in December 2012, and this is the difference. The conference was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it had many of the top South American researchers there, and they had a couple of international speakers.
Have you ever met Bob Dean?
Yes, I have met him once, but not really. It was really only in passing. Let me just tell you about South America, the difference in the attitude there. There were 500 people just queuing up outside, and the room inside was full, 500 packed out, and that was just to meet the speakers. They weren't actually doing the lectures. It was just the night before the conference. The South American countries are much more open. Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Peru, Argentina.
They're hotspots, don't they? Hotspots for UFOs?
Well, they basically, their governments and military people have done studies and have concluded it's ET, and they're far more open. There's a guy called A.J. Javard who runs the Brazilian UFO Magazine.
Yeah, I've got that down.
He sits down with his committee and sits down with the Brazilian Air Force to get records, and they now have an official protocol where they're working with the Brazilian government and the Brazilian military. Well, in the UK and in America, there's nothing like that. America is the most secretive government in the world on UFOs, and because of our so-called special relationship with America, Britain is arguably the second most secretive government in the world on UFOs. But if you went to South America, completely different attitude, and got some fantastic cases.
Brilliant. Oh, I'd love to go. I'd love to meet Jamie. Tell me about Mary Rodwell, please.
Mary Rodwell, met her 3 times. I think she was originally from Leeds, or certainly from Yorkshire. She was a nurse.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Is she Australian?
Yes, she lives now in Australia. And I'm actually going to be seeing her at the beginning of February, when I do the lecture in Sydney or Brisbane. But she is one of the. She created an organisation called HESELTINE, and basically she works with people who've had experiences, abductees and whatever. And she's if you met her, totally down to her. She was a psychiatric nurse in her background. She's very level-headed, and she's been working with people who claim to be abducted for many years, and she's one of the top experts out there. And she works with people who claim to have you ever heard of the term star children, indigo children, things like that? Well, these apparently are children with psychic gifts or whatever, but she doesn't do it just from without verification. She's doing lots of clinical tests and things like that, and there is lots of universities studying these children and things like that. So she's at the cutting edge of research into the abduction phenomena, and she, as I say, she's been doing it a long time now. She lectures around the world. But yeah, she's a lovely lady, and she's coming over to the UK in August and I can give you an exclusive. She's now going to be one of my speakers in August at the conference.
Lovely. Oh, then look, I'll be able to come.
You come through and get to meet us.
Oh, will do. Have you heard of a bloke called Dr. Jonathan Reed? Have you heard his story? He wrote a book called Link, an Extraterrestrial Odyssey.
I can't say I've read it. I've heard the name, but I don't really know too much about it, so I can't really...
I've just finished reading it, and someone on Facebook sent it, do you want it? Yeah. And they sent it me. And it's brilliant. I raved about it last week. It's you just know that it's true. Every word of it is true.
So this is a guy claiming to have been abducted?
No, he says that he's with his dog 60 miles outside of Washington, and he went hiking one day, and the dog sounded a bit weird, and he went to see what was going on, and the dog's having a fight with a grey, and then the grey rips the dog apart pretty much, and then he hits the grey, and he thought he killed it, but he hadn't, and then he wraps it up, took it home, put it in the freezer. And then he realised that he hadn't killed it, and he gave it water. It's a proper mental story. But it's true, you just know it's true. The guy lost everything. He had a good job, everything. But you know what it's like over there. They just erased his whole life.
What happened to the creature?
Well, it disappeared, didn't it? Disappeared along with everything else that was in his house. He got shot, he got beat up, it was awful. The book is a really, really, really good read. And
I don't really know anything about it, so I can't really comment.
Yeah.
But what I would say is it's a fascinating story on the face of it, but what is there to back it up in terms of...
Well, he's got evidence. He's got a bracelet that the dog had obviously... during a scuffle between the dog and the alien, this bracelet has fallen off, and it's got 3 pins inside the bracelet that punches your skin when you put it on, and then strange things start happening to your heart. And there was this obelisk there, and he thinks that the bracelet was a way to control the obelisk.
Have you seen the bracelet?
Well, I've seen pictures of it in the book. No.
But can you see what I'm saying? And unless you physically have examined that bracelet to see if it has got these prongs and whether it does do these things that's claimed, and I'm not decrying the story, but what I'm saying is, from an evidential point of view, that you're talking about a lot of things that would need a lot of verification. And I do believe that, and I'm not accusing him of this at all, but there are some people drawn to the abduction phenomena who I suspect have made up stories, because how do you prove it? But many of the best abduction stories have got backed up by multiple witnesses. Sometimes they've got physical marks on the body. They've got scoop marks. And I've met Dr. Roger Lear several times. He's the famous Californian podiatrist surgeon who has removed, I think now, 16 alleged implants from people who claim to have been abducted. And these implants that are all done on video, and you can all go onto YouTube and see them, and his book Aliens and the Scalpel explains it all. Everything is there. There's nothing hidden. It's all done proper medically.
Yeah.
But the key thing is that most of these objects that are recovered, there's no entry point. These are located around the body, come up on X-rays. There's no point of entry, and now, if there's a foreign body under the skin,
I don't get it.
Should reject it.
I've just written that word down. The body should reject it.
As an automatic response, well, in all of these 16 cases, the body doesn't reject, and they appear to have nerve endings attached to the object. Now, here's the thing: is this is an area where there is science going behind it, because each of the objects that's been removed are roughly about the size of a pea. And they've got like an outer sheathing that you can't cut with a scalpel. You have to use a special tool to remove it. Now, inside, there are known terrestrial metals inside. There's nothing, in a sense, extraterrestrial metal-wise that we're not aware of. But these metals are not found anywhere in the same composite. They're all pressed together, and inside there's like an oily substance. Nobody knows what that is, you know, and they react to magnets or in a strange way.